Hey there, Internet! Today we're going to be talking about how you can use SSH, or Secure Shell, to connect your client computer to your server computer and then remotely access your server computer. So for this particular example, we're going to be using openSSH, but there's a bunch of other different programs. I'm also going to be doing this on Linux Mint, but there's also this will probably work and be very, very similar on a majority of Linux systems. So let's begin. So to install SSH, you first need to do sudo apt-get install openSSH server. Now there's two different versions of openSSH. There's the server version and then there's the client version. The server version allows other computers to connect to the computer that you have the server version in the computer that the server version is installed on. So in this instance, my laptop here. So this will allow other computers, if I give them the right passwords and the right IP address, to connect to my computer. The client does the opposite. It allows the particular computer that has the client version on it to connect to a remote server computer. So for starters, I'm going to be showing you how to start and configure the server version, and then I have a virtual machine, which I'll show you how to do the client version on. So getting back to this, once you've typed the command in, you hit enter, and I'll give it my password. Now it's going to say basically that I've already installed openSSH server and that it's the newest version. Now if you haven't already installed it, it'll go through the process of installing it. So once you have it installed, if you want to make any changes to your server, the particular config files are located in etc/ssh. So you can do. Now I'm going to show you how to do it, but I've already moved to that directory, as you can see here. cd/etc/ssh. And again, it'll put me in the same directory. Now if we do ls and list all the files and folders, you can see that there's a couple config files. This is the main config file with all the stuff that we need to edit. This here is your public keys and your private key. And again, if you notice, there's even an one for RSA and other different forms of encryption. And you're probably wondering, okay, why are there keys here? Well, SSH and telnet are basically the same thing, except for one minor difference. SSH uses encryption. So again, to use the encryption, it has to have encryption keys. So here's the public encryption key, and here's the private public key, and then obviously this is the RSA version. So this folder has all the important files that go along with SSH. So if we want to make a couple changes to our SSH server, we can go sudo. I'm going to use the nano text editor, but you can use whatever text editor you want, Vim, Vi, whatever. So nano. And the file we want to edit is sshd_config. Now again, as you can see, there's a bunch of different settings, and if you want to change one of these settings, you first have to uncomment it, so so if I want to change the port number on my server from port 22 to whatever, I uncomment it. You can comment it. You can see it goes from blue to white. And then I can go in and I can change it. I can make it 2200, 220. I can make it 70,000. Now, again, I will recommend, if you don't know the ports that your computer are using, not to change them too much, because if you were to change it to something like port 80 is one of the ports that you use for internet. Or, more frequently, port 443. Now, these, like I said, these two ports are used for internet. And if you were to set your SSH to that, it would interfere with your internet and may cause your internet not to work. So for the sake of simplicity and not causing problems, we're just going to keep it at port 22. I'm going to recomment it. And when you're done, you can, or at least particularly for Nano, you can hit Control X. Again, Vim and Vi and some of the other text editors, the commands will be slightly different. But we're going to say yes, and then we're going to say enter to save it. And once our changes are made, we need to restart the service. So the command for this is sudo service sshd restart. Now, if nothing comes back, that's a good thing, which means it had no errors. Now, if we had done something wrong in the configuration file and we tried to restart it, it would then say there would be an error. And then, you have to go back and edit your SSH file and so on and so forth. But basically, when you get nothing back, that's good. Now that we have our server set up, how about we take a look at our client end? Now, to connect to our server, there's two different commands that we're going to use. Or, I'm sorry, there's two different programs we're going to use. One is the openSSH client, and the other is Putty. So now that we log back into our client, we'll start. How about we start with Putty? So to install Putty, it's sudo apt-get install Putty for Putty. It'll ask for the password of this virtual machine. And once again, it's going to say you have the newest version and so on and so forth. Because I've already installed it. Again, if you haven't, it'll go through the process of it. And if we want to install the openSSH client, it's openSSH-client for client. And then once again, it'll say that I've already installed it. It's already the newest version. And again, if you haven't already installed it, it'll go through the process of installing it and pulling it down from the repository and so on and so forth. So now that we have that, we can go to our programs. And Putty is right here. So Putty is has a graphical user interface. So again, you have to have some kind of graphical user interface to use it. So if you're using like an terminal version of Linux only, like a server, or maybe you somehow tied into a remote computer, you won't be able to use Putty, but we'll talk about how you can use openSSH instead, or at least the client version instead. So as you noticed here, and a window comes up and it asks for the host name or IP address. So this is so since we want to connect to my main laptop, we need to know what the IP address is. So if we do if config, that'll give it. I'm using the Wi-Fi, that's how I'm connected. So this is my IP address right here. Now, I've already done the port forwarding in my virtual machine. So if you want to learn how to do that, I'll try and throw a thumbnail up here to a video that explains it, and I'll definitely put a link down in the description. But again, the magical port forwarding this is already done. So if I plug in 192.168.200.6, it will connect. And you'll see it says log in. Now, a quick note that I want to mention before we continue. Notice here how it says that the beginning of the terminal says Joey at laptop-win-mint. This here is my username followed by the name of my computer. And this is its terminal. If you also notice how on the virtual box it's cas_user at cas-computer. Very important to notice. So if we plug in the username, so we need to log in as Joey. I'm going to give it my password. Now again, you'll notice that nothing comes up when I type in my password. It is plugging it in, but it won't show characters for it. Just good to note. And it'll connect. Now if you notice, there's a couple of things. It now has this Joey laptop-win-mint, which is this here because it's tied in. The other thing is, when you log in using telnet or SSH, what you also have to do is you have to be able to log in as a user on the server computer. So I had to use the Joey account with the Joey password to log in remotely to my server from my client. So continuing on. Right here, I'm in the home directory. If we do pwd, you can see it says Joey Home. And if we open up a folder, there's Joey Home. Now if you notice, there's no folder called ssh_test. But we can create it because we're tied in to our virtual machine. We're tied in through our virtual machine. So if I do mkdir for make directory, and I do ssh_test, now we didn't even need to refresh it. There's now an SSH test folder and nothing in it. Now let's say for now we are done with our connection here. We're done with Putty. We can do exit to exit and it will close out. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Putty uses a graphical user interface, or a GUI. If you don't, for some reason, have access to it, or you find that the the command line interface, or CLI, is a lot faster than your graphical user interface, or GUI, you can use openSSH. So if we do SSH, we have to specify the user, so Joey at the IP address of the remote computer, so 192.168.200.6. Now, if we did decide to change the port, we would have to use the -p followed by the port number. But because we're using the default port of 22, which is standard among just about all computers, we don't have to specify a particular port. So if I go enter, once again, it'll ask for the password of the remote user, which I'll give it. And once again, it will not show up. So once again, be aware of that. So if we hit enter, it'll log in, and you'll notice, once again, it'll change from this cas_user at cas-computers to Joey at laptop-win-mint. And that's how you know that you're in a different terminal prompt for a different user. Now if we go back to our SSH folder, there's nothing in there, and we can go cd ssh for change directory underscore SSH test. Oop. And you'll see that it changes. Now, let's put a couple test files in there. So we can do touch. We'll do test1.txt, test2.txt, and we'll do test3.txt. We'll hit enter once again. And if you notice, boom! We now have 3 test files right in our SSH test folder. So let's say this is all we needed to do for our connection. Once again, you'll type exit, if I can spell that right. There you go. And then it'll say logging out, and it'll disconnect from our remote server. So YouTube, that's just about all it takes to set up and connect through SSH. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to learn some more things about computers, I have some great videos on other computer-related things. Also, if you're just interested in learning other things, I recommend you check out my channel because I have some great videos on electronics and other computers-related stuff, and some Windows videos, and just even some stuff on audio. Again, I have to try and make more videos on that, but give the channel check that out. If you like what you saw, you know, subscribe, and a thumbs up always helps, especially if this video helped you out. If you have any questions, post down in the comments. And once again, if this helped you out, share it with a friend. Why not? So, thanks for watching. Bye.